Hello, Internet. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook, and anywhere else this video may appear. My name is Samuel Huber from Samuel Huber YouTube, Huber Family Adventures on Instagram, and Samuel Huber on Facebook. You can also find me at www.samuelhuber.net. I'm here with Chante Douglas and to talk about her new book, Echo Boy and ABC Girl. Chante,
Yes.
tell the internet a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a single parent of a child that is on the spectrum. He's 7 years old. His name is Levi. You probably can hear in the background a video game playing. So he loves video games. He loves Spider-Man. He loves cars. So he's a pretty awesome kid.
Very, very cool. So tell us a bit about your experience with autism. How has your perspective on having a child on the spectrum changed over the years?
Well, I will say before Levi got his diagnosis when he was 3, I really didn't know too much about autism. The only thing I did remember was watching a Dateline special about the connection between children with autism and horses. So there was this horse therapy that they were using to help kids to kind of with their communication skills, because there's supposed to be a special connection with horses and kids with autism. That was the only thing I ever knew about it. Now now that I have a child with autism, and I try to learn as much as possible through him because he's the best learning tool to kind of know and gain more knowledge from than any book can ever teach you. So now I just know, like, especially with him, that he doesn't, most kids don't fit what they call like the cookie cutter idea of what autism is. And especially if you don't know anything about autism, which, there's a lot of ignorance out there. But I know, like, as far as with Levi, his biggest thing is more so like with touch. So like different materials that may be on his skin, smell. I kind of noticed since we've been under quarantine, smell is a big thing with him. And taste. But like loud noises and bright lights and all that stuff, he loves all that. So that doesn't trigger him at all.
Very, very cool. What are can you give us some examples of some big lessons that you learned over the last 7 years with Levi, as you just mentioned?
Biggest lessons is, I know he's shown me a lot more patience. That honestly, being the same is lame. That everyone is supposed to be unique. Everyone is not supposed to meet like the quote unquote normal expectations of society. To live in the moment. And that everyone moves at their own pace. That, just because, your child didn't hit a milestone when they were supposed to doesn't mean they never will. So it's really just about living in the moment.
Gotcha. And for those of you who don't know, Chante is a published author now. As I mentioned earlier, with Echo Boy and ABC Girl. How did your experience with Levi motivate you to write this book?
And you know how much I love this book, Sam. This is my baby. So I could talk about this book all day. And thank you so much for supporting me with the book as well, Sam. I appreciate it.
No problem.
What inspired me? Well, I'm a big superhero fanatic, so I love Marvel. I love comic books. And I was brainstorming about this book for about 2 years before I actually got a chance to do it. Because one, I didn't think I could do it. But it just seemed like everything kind of connect the dots for me to get this book done. But I think the biggest motivation, I took Levi to go see the Spider-Verse movie, and to see the main character look like my son and how he reacted to Miles Morales. And I was thinking, like, well, there needs to be more representation of all types of kids, portrayed as superheroes. So that's really kind of sparked my whole idea of writing this book and creating, Echo Boy was easy to create. His sidekick, that was all from my imagination. I've had like at least 3 or 4 people ask me, is the little girl someone that I know? And I'm like, no, it's just I put a little bit of my personality in her. I always loved the name Jasmine, and also girls on the spectrum need to be represented too. You don't see that enough in children's books and in all forms of media. So
Yeah, definitely, because for girls it's harder to detect autism because it's been proven that women have their language part of their brain is higher developed, so women on the spectrum tend to hide behind it. So it's nice to see one actually represented. It's definitely an underspoken demographic.
right.
So that leads me to can you tell the folks a little bit about the plot of this book without giving away any of the twists?
Oh, about what the book is about?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically overall it's just two kids that they're best friends. They are both superheroes. They're both on the autism spectrum, and they like to help kids who are, especially in this book, it's about bullying. So they help a kid that's being bullied, and the conclusion is really nice. I really tried to give it a positive ending because a lot of kids go through it. They've experienced it, if they're on a spectrum or not. Bullying is definitely real and happening within that school age group.
Hmm. Awesome. Would you say this would be a good book for parents that just found out their child has been diagnosed with autism and how to help them through their school experience?
I think so. And you know what, like my whole thing was I wanted to write it. Well, two reasons why I wrote it. One, to show how much I love my son and how I view him every single day. But also I wrote it for parents who may not know anything about autism, and their kids may be in school with kids that have autism, to kind of educate them as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, just anybody that reads it, really, I just want them to walk away from that kids with autism are very empathetic. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not weird. They're not, other words I won't use that I've seen float around on social media when they talk about people on the spectrum, people who aren't labeled as, I hate that word, normal, but how society views them. So that's basically what I wanted to do. Just really just empower my son and educate, parents, and also comfort parents who are just now going through that initial stage of figuring out what to do after the diagnosis.
Speaking of which, what would you tell a parent who just found out their child is on the spectrum and
Oh man.
they've heard all the BS that is about the spectrum, and they're overwhelmed by all that's out there?
I just know for me, I really want to get away from telling parents that it's a grieving process, because I've seen a lot of big quote unquote organizations that are supposed to support the autism community, and they're promoting this whole, like, it's a grieving process and you're losing your child. You're not losing your child, and the diagnosis isn't all that your kid is. This is part of their DNA makeup, just like if you have brown eyes or blonde hair, they just have autism. The best thing you can do is support them 150%. Just know that they're going to learn things differently. They're going to hit milestones at a different pace. Early intervention is probably the most beneficial to help your child, but and I don't want to dilute the fact that, like, how people are going to feel, how they're going to react, because that's person to person. I just know me. I was, I cried only because, like, I wasn't educated on autism. I didn't know what the future held. But now 7 years, well, no, not 7 years, but 5 years in, it's like second nature now. Like, okay, well, that's what it is. We're still going to live life. Quality of life isn't going to diminish.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a death sentence. Yeah, we just embrace it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, and I think you're right. Like, we need to change the phrasing. It shouldn't be grief. It should be something like getting to know your child, just like any other parent, because every
Right.
child has their own way of communicating. Like, my son is neurotypical, but I still have to learn how to communicate with him.
Right.
Uh, Leading to my next question, how would you advise parents to get to know their autistic child, how to communicate with them? what have you found the best way to communicate with Levi?
Oh man, I know when well, this was even before his initial diagnosis. Um, he was in early intervention, but he was completely nonverbal. What we were doing was, I know for me, this is just my personal experience. I never stopped talking to him. I always had full, clear conversations with him, and I was repetitive every single time. Like it in the beginning is like, when are we going to have these two-way conversations? Like, when is it ever going to be a reciprocal conversation? Like in the back of my mind, but I'm like, one of these days he's going to talk. But I never stopped talking to him, and I never did baby talk. Like I always, if he was at his grandmom's house, and what my mom would do is she would call me, you know, like, you want to talk to Levi? I'm like, yeah. So we put him on the phone, and I would still have a phone conversation with him and just keep doing that. Or if we're in the car driving somewhere, I would still constantly just have those conversations. And that actually helps build language too, because their brain is absorbing all of that. And eventually when they get ready to talk, before you know it, it's like they talk nonstop.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I was definitely the same way. Once I got above the one syllable thing, I talked nonstop.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Let's see. And now let's talk about you, Chante. How is it important for self-care when it comes to being a single mom, having a child on the spectrum? Why is self-care so important to you? Because I see you posting about it all the time, and I know a lot of parents out there, like all their attention, I give everything to my child. Why is it important to give back to yourself in order to be a better parent?
Oh man. And I'm guilty of this. So I hope whoever watches this, they can relate. You know, you do want to go 150,000% for your kid to make sure they get all of the support and all the services, doctor's appointments, evaluations, therapy sessions, wraparound services, IEP meetings. It's a lot that goes into, you know, with your child. But I think what I kept not doing was self-care, and it kind of backfired. Matter of fact, I kind of like emotionally fell apart the end of last year and ended up having to go see a therapist, which she in turn told me I was actually having PTSD episodes and just wasn't realizing it. And now what caused the PTSD was prior situations that happened in my life, but on top of like not taking care of that and just devoting myself completely to Levi, that
Mhm.
backfires. So it's extremely important that, like, if you are suffering from any type of mental illness, you're depressed, you're stressed out, you have anxiety, take care of that first, because if you don't take care of you, you're no good to your child as far as being their caregiver, their parent, their supporter, their advocate. Is extremely important. Like, don't do what I did. Like, I went 5 years without handling separate issues beside, and autism isn't an issue, but separate things that was happening in my life that I should have handled that coincide with, you know, being there for Levi. So yeah, and when it hits you, because it was pretty bad the end of last year.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm happy to see you bouncing back and having success with this book. Speaking of having rough times, a lot of parents out there are stuck at home with their kids and dealing with number of meltdowns. I'm sure Levi's had his share. What are some tips you could give parents that help not only your child but you get through a meltdown and get back on track?
I would definitely say, definitely have a support system, and it can be difficult sometimes. Especially with this whole quarantine, because I can't take, he wants to go to school, he wants to see his teacher, he wants to see his friends at school. I've gotten some tips from his outpatient therapist, so she sent me some things that to kind of help ground, like to help balance his brain. So we do a lot of musical instrument activities, so that kind of keeps his brain settled. As far as the meltdowns, honestly, this is what I do. I kind of just like let him just work through it, and I ignore it until he calms down. and then, you know, we'll just resume. Like his trigger is trying to do schoolwork. So if he doesn't want to do it, I'm like, all right, we'll come back to it. Now, if he gets really angry, which that's happened like a couple times this week so far, I kind of do reinforcement. So, you know, I tell him, like, if you got to do at least one page in your workbook, if you do that, then you can play video games, you can watch TV. If you don't, you can't watch TV, you can't do video games until we at least do half the page. Like, I'm like, it's almost like a negotiations with him. But if he's still not calmed down, then I'll, you know, it'll take him like 15, 20 minutes to kind of reset, and he'll come over like, Mom, I'm sorry. And I'm like, all right, let's finish the work. You want to do work now? Okay. So then he'll sit down and he'll finish it. As far as for myself, I'm thankful I do have therapy sessions, that I still have someone that I can kind of, you know, help me to kind of re-regulate. Another great thing too is I listen to classical music, because sometimes when he's in the middle of a meltdown, I feel that same range of emotions with him. So I let him calm down. I'll go in my room, I put my earphones in, and I'll play a song from like Beethoven or something jazz, something really calming to kind of reset my brain too. Because kids kind of feed off your energy too. So if I kind of re-regulate, it'll help him too.
Right. You still want to feed into it.
Right.
Okay. Well, I had a question. Let's see. Crap, I totally forgot my question. So, what are some ways that Levi communicates with you that are different from a normal kid? Like, how a lot of parents I've talked to, like, he never makes eye contact. How can I know my son cares if he never makes eye contact with me? It's kind of led me down this line of thought of autism should be looked at as like a neural language rather than a disability. I like it's like a language, because we do have our own ways of communicating and showing empathy.
Right.
What are some ways that like Levi over the years has like shown, hey Mom, I care about you, or Mom, I effed up just now. Like you just said earlier, he said I'm sorry, but what are some other ways that he has shown that he is trying to connect, that parents that just got diagnosed, their child just diagnosed, can look for the note, hey, my child is looking to connect with me?
I know before Levi was verbal, we were doing like what's that? It was something with the pictures, the PECS program. Yeah. So we started doing that to kind of, one, to help build his language, but also to kind of make a connection of how to communicate. And then when he would kind of show like an item that he would want, what I would do was I would ask him like, what color is it? What shape is it? So that would kind of make a connection of like trying to tell me like what he wanted. And I'll play with you in a minute. And speaking of which,
communicating, Levi.
Oh, what did you say, Sam?
I was saying good communicating, Levi, right there.
Yeah. And go ahead, give it, because I can do both. Come on. All right, so I'm going to be playing video games while I'm interviewing with you.
All right. I'll take
so. Oh, I have the wrong one? Okay. Go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
All right. So the question was, how does Levi communicate with you, showing that he cares? Because most neurotypical kids will hug you, make eye contact, and you use their words. But for autistic children, their form of affection and effort to connect is different. How has Levi tried to communicate with you over the years?
I know when he wasn't verbal, when he would get upset, it was like head banging and throwing things and scratching and screaming. He's always been really affectionate. Like when he wants to show that he's happy, or, you know, he's always been a hugger and a kisser. So that's always been like, you know, a good thing with him. But yeah, as far as now, he'll tell me like, I'm angry, or you're angry, Mom. So he's getting a lot better with recognizing emotions and facial expressions. So yeah, that's what we're currently working on now.
Gotcha. So the question I would like to end this segment on is, how would you like the world to start viewing autism? To go from grieving of the loss of your child to this child should be celebrated for the amazing individual that they are. Next
Right.
Einstein, the next Tesla, next Tim Burton, John Lennon, whoever this child ends up being. What would be your message to the world about autism?
Children and adults are amazing. Children and adults with autism are amazing. Also, we need to get away from the fact that just because they may learn different, or there's a delay in their milestones, that doesn't mean that they're not capable of achieving great things. I think a lot of times, especially in the school district and people in the field of earlier intervention, they set very low standards for these kids, because in their mind they think, well, because it takes extra 5 or 10 steps to kind of get them to achieve a goal, that doesn't mean they're not capable of great things. So that's one thing I definitely want people to realize. And also, just because you see a kid screaming and having there's a big difference between a meltdown and a tantrum. And not every kid is having a tantrum out in public. A lot of times it could be a child with autism, and they're struggling to process all the sensory things that we take for granted, or that I take for granted, because I'm neurotypical. It could be painful for them. And that's one thing I learned, that it's their reactions to things, it always has a purpose behind it. They just don't have these meltdowns or have these triggers for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's because all of their senses are heightened. And I mean, I want people to kind of be more empathetic. It's more to it than just being aware and being accepting. You have to be empathetic too. And if that's missing, then it's like it defeats everything that we're advocating for.
Amen. Yeah, the huge thing here is just learning that we communicate in our own way. And for parents out there, look at what happened right before your child had the meltdown. A lot of parents I've seen don't know like my child's freaking out for no reason. No, even the smallest of things. Like I freak out in market, so I have to use my essential oils and all my stuff. Like I need a lot of student things to be out in public. So I think you're right. Like we have to be aware of the fact that our autistic children are aware of a lot more than we are, things that we take for granted. And what's great about your child in that way is that they're so in the moment. Like they remember so many details, and that's something that a neurotypical child doesn't do. And that makes your child a superhero, just like Echo Boy. That he is so aware of his surroundings, and he'll learn to use that for his career, to get the girl later in life. As I preach, autism is my pickup line. That's how I got my wife. And yeah, and just I think books like that, like Chante's book, are going to create this more positive vibe around autism instead of all the social stigma that we have faced. So Chante, how can people buy this book or get in contact with you to learn more about the future adventures of Echo Boy and ABC Girl?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon. You can get in contact with me on Facebook, Chante Douglas, Instagram, Echo Boy's Mom 82, and I have another page just for the book, which is Echo Boy and ABC Girl. So either one of those pages you can follow. I'm currently working on ABC Girl solo book, so that's in production right now. So that should be done by the end of May, beginning of June. And I just finished writing Echo Boy solo book, so that should be done and illustrated, I'm hoping sometime in the fall. And I just finished creating a whole team of kids with special needs. So it's like a little mini Avengers. That's the only way I can kind of think of it. But I just developed all the characters, and I'm going to start writing that story the beginning of next year.
Awesome. We'll definitely have you back on the show for each one of those books to help promote it. Okay, everyone, that is the end of this interview. Please click the description below and keep on following for more Heroes on the Spectrum. All right, Chante, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam. I appreciate you.
Bye, Internet.